We were invited to have a conversation about incivility in the classroom and to draw from some research that we've been doing that resulted in the publication of a book called Faculty Identities and the Challenge of Diversity that gave us the opportunity to really advance some conversation about incivilities in the classroom and the role that faculty can play around those issues. I'm Al Young. I'm the chair of the Department of Sociology at the University of Michigan. I also hold an appointment in the Department of Afro-American and African Studies.
I'm Mark Chesler, Professor Emeritus from the Sociology Department, and I teach now in the program in Intergroup Relations.
Several years ago, Mark approached me with the idea of doing a project to really bring to light a set of issues that I think many faculty think about, have thought about, but have never really had the opportunity to read about it in a formal study. And so Mark asked me to join him in interviewing faculty to talk about how they deal with conflict and incivility in the classroom, largely but not exclusively centered around race, ethnic, gender differences, sexual orientation, in an effort to really try to make sense of what faculty can do, in some ways offer advice about what they should do, but more generally to begin to raise awareness about this issue that seems to be troubling for so many faculty, yet never really gets the focused attention that it may deserve. And so we deliberately focused upon faculty that were award winners in undergraduate teaching. We thought it'd be important to hear from people that had proven themselves in the classroom and that therefore might be a little more willing and open to discuss what they think is going on, in some cases what they've tried to do in their classrooms around race, ethnic, gender differences, and how they relate to conflict.
And we've continued after the book to have conversations with faculty around the university, talking about what faculty members have told us and what that helps us think about. With regard to incivility, the research indicates that there are several different kinds of civility that go on or that can go on in the classroom. One that generates the most conversation is students' incivility to other students. A second kind of incivility is students' incivility to faculty members, such as white students or students of color challenging faculty members of color or female faculty regarding their expertise and credentials in their subject matter or their authority to manage the classroom. A third form of incivility is faculty incivility to students. And students report that sometimes faculty members ask students of color to be experts or spokespersons for their own race and ethnicity, and about Detroit, much as students sometimes do that to one another.
So much that we seem to uncover have to do with microaggressions or circumstances that might have unfolded before students came into the classroom, or a lot of less well-recognized or unconscious feelings that people have that all come into play here. And so it seems to me that just recognizing the breadth of the circumstances, the conditions, the factors that surface is really important.
So part of the question is, when stuff happens, what is it that faculty members can do? I think the most important thing in these circumstances is for the faculty member not to overlook stuff, not to avoid it, because to avoid it or overlook it doesn't mean that it isn't having an impact on students. So faculty members certainly want to establish some degree of control of the situation, recognize it, and lead to some kind of an orderly conversation. But control doesn't mean driving it underground. And a faculty member needs to model, I think, ways of working with uncomfortable or challenging circumstances. These situations need to be addressed actively. Issues need to be surfaced without blame, with inquiry, and with discussion of the impact. How is this impacting us? Who is it shutting out? And the faculty member at that point can be in an inquiry posture. And also, I think, paying attention to how our own social identity impacts what we can do.
We learned in our research that there's some practical things that faculty can do that go a long way to addressing issues of incivility in the classroom. The first having to do with thinking about the very literal space you're teaching in. That our classrooms in higher education aren't necessarily ours in the same way that the elementary school teacher thinks this is my room, or the high school teacher thinks this is my room. The classroom in higher education is neutral space Faculty come out of their offices or their labs to go to the classroom. Students come to the classroom. And so one of the things that I found important in our research is for faculty to think seriously about what kind of space they're operating in, whether there are 200 students in a classroom or 20, and what that means for being able to realize who their students are and how they're responding to the moment, and how they may be able to be hidden. I also think that faculty can do a lot in their syllabi to make clear what they're going to do around incivility and conflict. To first of all acknowledge that it exists in society, hence it can and probably will at some moment exist in the classroom.
I think that's really important, because when we talk about diversity and students of color and white students and men and women, these are often the subject matter of the social sciences and often of the humanities. But these issues are going on in classrooms in the natural sciences and in engineering all the time as well. So it doesn't matter what the subject matter of the class is, for there need to be some rules or understanding about how we're going to behave with one another.
Some other things that I think are important to acknowledge that we've talked about is having a syllabus that not simply sets ground rules for conversation. The syllabus can be a formal statement of how the faculty member is going to try to create a safe space for conversation and learning. But beyond that, the syllabus and the faculty member's own behavior can demonstrate that they're committed to using conflict if and when it services as a learning tool. So I encourage faculty members to surface these issues quite literally in the classroom, to talk about not simply incivility as a problem for the learning experience, but how incivility and conflict will be addressed in this classroom. So the faculty member in particular has got to be aware of the fact that everyone in the learning space is a participant in the situation. And the faculty member's got to be aware of that and be prepared to address it, to acknowledge it. I think also in the effort to create small group and student-to-student learning opportunities, that the faculty member owes it to the students to say something more than you will do small group work or you will engage your peers in the classroom, but to talk about what might happen given the fact that students are coming out of familiar backgrounds to encounter people that are different from them and what that might mean for learning experience.
So, I mean, if we try and pull together a number of the threads of what we're talking about, we assume as faculty members that we know the content of what we're teaching. That's kind of taken for granted. But just as important as content knowledge, and what often isn't present in the classroom, is faculty members knowing themselves, and not in the sense of who am I, but what's my likely impact on the students in this classroom. And important for faculty members to know a range of pedagogical options. What to do at the moment when things happen that have to be dealt with, and proactively, ahead of time, setting, as you said, a context or a set of guidelines for how we're going to operate in the classroom. And above all, in the face of these kinds of situations, faculty members finding the courage to act in difficult situations.
And part of that courage, I believe, is calling into the conversation chairs and directors and deans and associate deans and people that at the institutional level can both acknowledge that conflict and incivility is a part of the social world, hence a part of the learning experience, and that the conversation therefore has got to extend beyond the classroom to really result in transformations of the classroom experience for everyone.